Hey guys,
Hey.
let us know if the sound's working. And if you're watching us, thanks for tuning in and leave us a comment. Let us know who's watching and where you're watching from.
Yeah, we're very excited to have our first Missouri NAMA.
Yeah. Hopefully the internet quality is way better. So let us know if the video and sound is doing well. Um, we wanted to start with some news. And so the first thing is we're going to start changing things up. So NAMA won't be only an Ask Me Anything. It'll be mostly an Ask Me Anything, but we'll also include some other things like a challenge, hopefully, every month. So this month, the lesson that we made for you, it should go up maybe the first week of January, is about thresholds. So your homework or your challenge is to watch that video and give us the best threshold video you can send us with the highest level distractions you can find. You'll see what I mean by that when you watch my videos.
Yeah,
So,
should they post them publicly on Patreon so that other people can see?
yeah, you can post them on Patreon. You can post them on Facebook, hashtag RSG Nosework.
Okay.
Yeah, something like that.
Or
You can
maybe it
post them
should
places.
be RSG Challenge or NAMA Challenge.
NAMA
Hashtag NAMA
challenge.
Challenge.
Yeah, okay. So here's the first challenge. Come up with the best hashtag for a NAMA challenge, and then post it with that hashtag. We're still playing around with some of these ideas. Another thing is, now that I have more time to be filming lesson videos, I want to know from you guys what you're most interested in so I can get that done. I want to do kind of one foundation lesson and one patterns lesson every month. It's a little ambitious because it does take a lot of time for me to edit these videos, but that's my goal. So if you have some topics that are speaking to you that you want to hear about, let us know as soon as you can. Do you want to talk about the book club?
Yeah, so we thought it would be fun to start a book club reading books related to nosework or scent detection in general. So we are thinking that we might start with either Fred Helfer's book, which is The Nosework Handler from Foundation to Finesse, or a book about, what is that one called? It's called Scent of the Missing, Love and Partnership with a Search and Rescue Dog. So a little bit different than what we do for canine nosework, but extremely related. So let us know which of those two you're more interested in, and that's what we'll do for our first month, whatever gets more votes.
Yeah, and we've been getting requests to do book reviews, and I thought it might be more interesting than just hearing a book review is to start a book club where we all read these books together and we discuss the ideas in the books, kind of.
Yeah. And if you don't have time and you're not interested in that, you can read or watch
Yeah,
the review at the end.
exactly. We'll definitely do that.
Do both.
Yeah.
Do we want to talk
Giveaway
about
time?
Yeah, okay. So maybe we should hold off on the giveaway till pretty much everyone who's going to be here is here since we're only 3 minutes in.
Okay, fair enough.
But we are going to give away the whichever book we choose for this month. That's going to be one of our giveaways. So we will send that out to whoever wins that one.
Yeah.
So, but we'll hold off until maybe midway through. And then we're also going to give away
Well, you don't have to tell that now.
Okay.
We'll tell that when we do it.
So hold tight for that. No leaving in this NAMA because we're not telling you things.
One more thing, a little bit of news, which is we've started to get some behavior questions now as well that are not directly related to nosework, but just general dog kind of questions. And if there's not a lot of questions for that month, then I don't have any problem talking about that. But I'm going to start doing Ask Me Anythings for general dog behavior on my other account, which is my Dog Jitsu account. So if general dog behavior questions, aggression, behavior, obedience training, things like that, if any of that's interesting to you, you can kind of check that out. We'll probably do the first one next month. But yeah, that way this can be kind of primarily nosework, and then any general dog questions are on the other channel. And that way I don't have to muddle nosework topics up with some potentially controversial topics. Not that nosework isn't controversial. You can have endless fights about formal alerts and patterns, and oh man, people get very upset.
Yeah, sort of differently controversial.
Yes, but we don't need to muddy that up with an additional conversation about dominance and clickers and anything like that.
No, but if there are behavior questions directly related to nose work, then we'd of course love to discuss those.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay.
All right, are we ready to get into questions?
Yeah, so let's take a look. By the way, hi Rose, I saw your comment. So this is a first question. It says, I assume you're not a big fan of directed searching. However, when you do use it, would you ever face your dog and walk backwards, indicating with your hand that you would want him to investigate a specific area? To me, that seems almost like micromanagement. Yeah, and this is a problem because a lot of people, especially people who are new to the sport, that's their impression because that's what they've seen on TV when a police officer runs a dog in nose work. And then even people who aren't new to the sport, who have been doing nose work and dog training for a long time, but maybe is unfamiliar with scent detection, at some point they get exposed to a police handler doing that and they go, oh, is this the way it's supposed to be done?
Yeah, it's definitely not uncommon amongst police handlers. And of course, everyone, since they're the professionals, everyone thinks whatever they do must be kind of the best way to handle a dog, and so it's really important to think about those things critically. And so that's a great question.
It is,
and you definitely will see it in all levels of nose work at competition, and it for better or worse results, depending on the situation.
Yeah, and so one of the things about that is, rather than talking about is it good or bad, which is, I don't like talking in those terms because that implies some level of morality to it. I'd rather talk about pros and cons. So the first thing I would say about facing your dog and moving backwards. Let's just isolate, because that's multiple things. Facing your dog, moving backwards, and indicating with your hand. Because you can indicate with your hand without facing your dog and moving backwards, and you can face your dog and move backwards without indicating with your hand. So facing your dog and moving backwards, what are the advantages of that? The advantage to that is that you're a physical block to the dog, and so your dog can't go a certain speed. Like if they really want to go fast, you can sort of slow them down that way. And you're drawing them into you rather than pushing them. A lot of nose work handlers I see running behind their dog are driving the dog in all areas of the search area really fast. So they think they're giving their dog a free search, but to me that's just as much pressure as being in front of the dog backing up. And for me, my goal as a handler is to remove pressure. So both of them are too much pressure, but I would use both of them in the right situations. Another thing about moving backwards, I tell all my students, I do not want to see you do that because I do not want to hear it when you injure yourself. Okay? And if you talk to any of these police trainers, most of them have good stories about the time where they stepped in a ditch and fell over, smacked their head into the mirror of a car or something like that. People injure themselves all the time doing that. One of my own students who I told, don't do this. I'm showing you how to do it, but don't do it. She went to a trial and broke her wrist at the trial. She fell over backwards when she tried this.
Yeah, walked backwards and there was a bench back there.
She finished the search and the whole trial, actually, with a broken wrist. Yeah. But it's not recommended.
It's risky. And there are enough ways to get hurt. You don't need to add more to them, usually. The people that I see do it successfully often have a dog that's very small and moving so slowly that it doesn't really matter what side they're on. Yeah. If I tried to do it with Icy, she would probably bowl me over. And I do think that the injury aspect is really worth taking into consideration. But I also think that it's a really weird picture for the dog. You're kind of in their way. I mean, you may be drawing them, and it may be better than driving them, but I think neither of those would be the best option.
Yeah. I think in general, if you're trying to slow your dog down with handling, it's like really the wrong way of approaching the problem. You should be training them better so that the dog works slower. And there are a lot of ways to do that, the most important of which is the running drill.
And some people may like it because it puts them in a position relative to their dog where they might be able to see their nose better than they usually do. Sure. Which, if that's the case, then yeah, you should absolutely be looking for ways to be able to see your dog's nose. But that might not be the best one either. Should we move on to the indicating with your hand aspect?
So presentation with your hand. First off, touching the search area in a competition could be considered a faultable thing. Now, you can present with your hand without touching things. You know, I'm not touching Natalie right now. But to me, it's insulting to the dog. It's like, is your dog so stupid that you have to point out to him where to check? To me, it shows a complete lack of faith in your dog's ability to work.
Yeah, so where the the person who asked the question says micromanagement, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's completely micromanagement, and for dogs with any amount of drive, that's going to piss them off.
But that said, is there a situation where I would use it with my dogs? Yeah, probably. Put me in enough scenarios, I'll use every technique in the book. And there's nothing. I think it's always bad to not learn a technique on principle. It's like you should learn everything, understand its effects on your dogs, and be ready for the situation to pop up where you might use it.
Yeah.
And maybe you go like, yeah, this is something I'd never use, or maybe you find something that, hey, this really works for me and my dog.
Yeah, and in general, if I want to get my dog into an area they haven't been and I feel the need to present, I'm going to present with my shoulders first, and then if I need to present more specifically, I would go to my hand. But I almost always regret doing that because then my dog is more focused on me than doing their job. So I'd rather just train them to get into all the areas of the search and then trust that if they needed to get there, they would have if I've given them the opportunity and not like try to cram them into every corner by presenting, which is what I see people do often.
Yeah. To me, the perfect search is a handler and dog who work off leash, where the dog is doing everything as if the handler is micromanaging, but the handler is not micromanaging. And that, in order to get to that point, you have to invest a significant amount of time to training and a very high quality of training. You have to know exactly what you're doing and why you're doing it. It's not easy to do.
No. All right.
One comment about the book club idea is she was saying some of the books might be available on Audible for people with limited time. And if we choose a book that's on Audible, then whoever wins the giveaway will give them their choice of a hard copy or a...
Yeah.
And if you get a hard copy, if you want a hard copy, maybe we'll even sign it. That's really pretentious and egotistical, but who knows? Maybe someone might like something like that.
Yeah, and I'm sure that not all the dogs books, since these are often probably going to be smaller type books, like Fred's, I don't think would have an Audible option.
Right.
But the other one does, and I would say maybe about half the books might have an Audible option.
It just depends on what books people are interested in us reviewing.
Yeah.
Scent of the Missing is the one that people asked about. The one I recommend is the Tracking Skills from Switty, which, as far as I can tell, doesn't exist.
Well, you can buy it for $70.
For $70
off of one website.
Yeah.
And so we'll have to see if there are any other options. We own it, but I don't think everyone wants to buy a $70 book.
Okay. So
it's a good one, though.
Next question, and then I think we'll do the book giveaway.
All right.
So I've just started using a little bit of leash control and our voice and hand indication to keep Willie from blasting through the opening section of a search area, or to move him to another section of the search area where he is over searching the area he is currently in. I guess that's kind of connected to the last question. So a lot of this will make more sense when you watch my threshold video, but in my opinion, holding the dog back makes them burst through even worse. So you create a worse problem. It's the basic principle of opposition reflex. Dogs pull on leash because we pull back. When we stop pulling on them, they stop pulling on us. That said, can you use leash pressure and presentation in a trial to help the dog get a threshold hide? Yeah, I've seen it done. But that's not as impressive to me as the dog who doesn't need any help, right? So for me, the question is, how do I get to the point where my dog doesn't need any help?
Yeah, and if you're the one doing it, you have to remember to do it.
Yes.
You have to do it well. You have to not oversell an area with nothing and then end up with a false alert. So there's a lot that you're having to do yourself if that's what you're doing, as opposed to training the dog to do it. And you'll see in the threshold video that at the start of the video, the dog is blasting through that area. And at the end of the video, she's not. And it is something that has to be maintained, but it's not hard to plant the idea in the dog's head.
Yeah, and I forgot where I was going with that. Oh, I use a hand motion to move from a hide to another hide, or if I want my dog to leave an area. I don't usually use my hands. I've got enough working relationship with my dogs that I can just turn my shoulders and they kind of move on unless they want to stay behind. The thing is, when I want to move my dog, I want to suggest this
Mm-hmm.
as minimally as possible so that my dog has the maximal ability to ignore what I'm saying so that they can say, no, I want to stay here longer. If I really am forceful, the dog has to exert a lot of effort to resist me, and that costs them energy. And I don't want to constantly conflict with them super hard because they'll run out of energy really quickly.
Yeah, I like that word that Michael used. That's what I almost always use when just talking about handling, is making suggestions to the dog that you should not be the one in charge in the search. And so when you are saying check this or go here, it is a suggestion, and you need to be open to the dog saying, no, you're being stupid. We're following odor right now. Um, so I think that's an important thing to keep in your head.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I also think your voice and your leash, to me, uh, it's less overwhelming than using your hand. You know, I don't know. That look just doesn't look good to me. Aesthetics are important. I don't care what anyone says. I want people to think my searches look pretty.
Yeah, and depending on the dog, certain movements are going to potentially suck them into obedience more
Yeah,
than
sure.
others.
You're
Just
very
depends
likely to
on
get a false.
what your dog's, training history is. A dog
Mhm.
with a huge number of years doing agility may
Yeah.
get pulled out of their search by a lot of shoulders. So just, you got to play around with what works for your dog.
And if you've tuned into us recently, make sure you comment, say hi, let us know where you're watching from. We like hearing from you guys, knowing that we're not just talking to a camera.
All right, should we do the giveaway now?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so we'll start with the book. So whichever book we decide to do for this month, or for January, we're going to give to one of you. So if you want the book, on Patreon, that's the only place to put in your hashtag, because that way we can tell what order they came in. Do hashtag NAMA book, and the first one to put in hashtag NAMA book on Patreon gets that book, and we'll get your address from you. And then we're going to give away a T-shirt.
Well, we'll do that later.
Oh.
We'll do that later. We'll spread them out. We'll spread them
Okay.
out. They're more interesting that way. Oh, there we go. Oh, Rose beat Patty by a hair. Wow. Okay, that was quick.
Lots of competition this week.
Wow,
this
yeah,
month.
a lot of competition. Wow.
We're
Okay.
going to have to come up with more things to give away.
Okay, so next question. What are some games or drills to practice putting pressure on the handler, especially for people who train on their own a lot? Thank you. That's a really good question. It's something that I get a lot when I do game seminars. For those of you who haven't done a game seminar with me, you'll find out very quickly that it's not about fun in games. It's about competition and pressure. I think, and it's about game theory and how to make the best choices you possibly can in a given scenario. And we use games to teach handlers different ways that stress affects psychology. But anyways, a lot of people say, well, this was really fun and I put a lot of pressure on myself and I learned a lot, but how do I do this on my own? And there are two super important things that you can easily do that will instantly put pressure on you. And the first is to time every single search you do. Time them, okay? And the second is to video. Those are the two most important things you should be doing regularly. The act of filming yourself, if you've never filmed yourself before, and we get this a lot with people who want to do like the video submission for our Patreon, they never send me a video. I have some people who've done it for months and they never send me a video. And my suspicion is because filming themselves is a lot of pressure. And
it's a ton of pressure. I hate it.
Yeah. It took me a long time, but once I get in the swing of it, it's easy. So film yourself, and once you get over that pressure, film yourself and make the commitment that what you film, you will post publicly, and that will put on an extra pressure.
Mm-hmm.
The first time I ever did a live stream class, I don't think I ever told anybody, but you can actually see it in the live stream. I told my class, "Hey guys, welcome to class. It's going to be a live stream today." And they were all like, what? A live stream? And we did a very basic, simple drill. And people fell over, just flat on their faces. Okay? People freaked out. They forgot how to reward their dog. They forgot how to talk. It was absolutely stunning just to say, we're doing the same thing we've always done. There's just a camera here. right? No, nobody cares. Nobody's going to make fun of you or know who you are or anything like that.
Couldn't even see you because the camera.
Yeah,
the
oh,
quality
it was
so
terrible.
bad.
But you have no idea how much filming will do, and timing, and putting that pressure. Like, okay, how are my times comparing to what I think my time should be, or what other people are doing with their times?
And if you can set a timer that's going to do countdowns for you.
Yes.
Countdowns are super, super pressuring.
Yeah. Like the 30-second game. So that's a game we play a lot. We'll make videos for all these games, but I'll quickly describe it. It's basically, there's a whole bunch of hides out, and the dog has 30 seconds to find a hide. And if the dog can find the hide within 30 seconds, he can keep searching for 30 seconds more. If he can't find the hide in 30 seconds, the search is over. Doing that kind of search with your dog, and promise yourself you won't let it 31 seconds, 32 seconds. No. If they get to 30 seconds, and I don't care if their nose is this close to a hide, bummer. You didn't do 30 seconds, right? That's really, really fun pressure game. You have those kinds of things are great. And they don't require other people, although other people really do help.
It does. And if you have the opportunity to there are some trainers, including ourselves and others who do, real-time online lessons.
Right,
And
so we can put some pressure on
that can be
you.
a way to get pressure put on yourself, especially if you do it with a few different people and you aren't necessarily used to working with them, because the more you work with someone, the more comfortable you get.
Yeah.
And also you can, find people to work with who will intentionally put pressure on you, like we will.
Yeah.
Or if you have training friends or non-nosework training people who can just be there, and audiences and all kinds of
Well,
stuff.
that's what I was about to say, which just popped in my head, which was practice in a very public place. I think oftentimes when we look for nosework places to practice, we choose like some secluded area of a park. Go practice in the most busy park, or the busiest time of the day, or a pizza, like a shopping area, or a train station. Somewhere where there are going to be lots of people there. Not only are you going to have a really well-trained dog who can ignore a lot of great distractions, you're going to feel the pressure of performing while other people are around you.
Mm-hmm. Especially if it's just enough people that they might be paying attention to you. So not so crowded that you're not going to be relevant. But just the right amount where they're going to be like, oh, what's that person doing over there?
Yes. And people are going to come up and ask to pet your dog while they're working.
Or little kids will steal your hides, which has happened to us on a number of occasions.
And all those are fun things. I think that's real life, which is good to play with the dogs.
Yeah. And obviously, taking if you have a dog with issues, the safety of your dog and all that. But you can be probably close enough to get the
Hi, everybody.
benefit.
We got a question if we can post to the Facebook page. You can post questions, comments, anything like that to the Facebook page. But for the giveaways, it has to be on Patreon.
Got to keep everybody in one place.
Okay, so next question.
Yes.
Okay, Mimosa is fast with containers, even though we never practice containers, unless we do training in class. We do practice lots of exterior hides in our yard and some interior. She's still good in all elements, but she really stands out in container searches. Any thoughts on why she excels at containers when we don't even practice them on our own?
Because you don't practice them on your own.
Exactly. I tell a lot of my students, don't practice containers, don't practice containers, don't practice containers. Partly because I think containers will often get boring to dogs really quickly.
Yeah.
And boring to handlers. I don't think dogs get bored, but the handlers get bored. And handlers tend to do containers in a very weird, repetitive ways. Like they'll just do 5 ORT box container searches in a row. Where we won't do that with other types of searches. We'll always change it somehow. But with containers, we just routine do drills.
And I do think it does become same-ish to the dog because it's containers. And it's almost always in one of the containers. And so it's less like they're going out and truly searching and be like, okay, is it in this box or that box?
Also, because containers are like basically a binary choice, it's either there or it's not. It's not challenging to the dog, and if your reward is not super exciting to your dog, or your dog isn't very motivated, the dog's like, why am I doing this? It's not very interesting, it's not very challenging, and the reward's not super exciting. So they perform better in other elements because they're more challenging. So the dog pays a little more attention.
Yeah, when things are easy, you're not going to try very hard.
You're not going to give your best effort.
Yeah. And I think there are also other reasons we suggest you don't practice it a lot is the potential pitfalls with containers, like being slow to reward creating, scratching, and stomping on the boxes, or just reward placement causing those things, and the fact that they're inaccessible hides, and so you're practicing repetitions of inaccessible hides, and the dogs will tend to drift to the odor falling on the box next to it or whatever, and then that you get real major issues in containers. So that's slightly off topic from the question.
But I rarely practice containers. And I think if you build odor obedience in other environments, it'll transfer to every other environment. So it's good for the dog to see containers as a novel environment, but it's bad to do them as a routine. I think the only reason people do them is because they're an official element of trial.
Yeah, and there are ways to make them fun. But if
Yeah,
I am
sure.
going to practice
Absolutely.
them, I like to practice with a variety of different kinds of containers with different seams, so that I'm working on the dog, discovering seams of different kinds on different kinds of containers. Cardboard, plastic, tin, luggage, anything you can think of. And then when they're figuring out which container it's in, I'm opening the container and rewarding them at source.
And I prefer, rather than changing the types of containers, I prefer to add other kinds of distractions. So I will do the running drill. If I do containers, it's you need to figure out which container it's in while I do some kind of crazy distraction to try to throw you off. That's what I'll tend to do if I'm doing containers, and I basically rarely do it other ways. And my dogs really like containers, I think, because we rarely do them, and they're always something really exciting that we have in store for them. Yeah, okay, let's go next. Okay. What does waiting to reward until your dog has made a decision look like, and how is it different than rewarding the dog when they've alerted on the hide? That's an interesting question. There's not a lot of, there's no standardization of the terms people use in nose work. So when your dog has made a decision is the same thing as when they've alerted on the hide.
For most people.
For most people. Now, there are some, just like what is considered an alert is different to every single person you ask, same as the decision. So I could say, well, my dog made a decision that there's a hide in the room. Should I reward the dog when they make that decision? Most people will say no to that. But what if my dog is this far away from the hide? Should I reward that? What if this is the seam of the box and this is where the hide is? Well, now that changes, right? So people have different definitions, and it's really frustrating for the dog because it changes in every scenario.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of people, waiting for the dog to make a decision ends up being when the dog turns and looks at them, which then that turns into their alert.
Yes.
But I think a lot of times you'll hear people use that when it's an inaccessible problem.
Yeah.
And they're wanting for you to wait until the dog has finished the problem and feels like they're done, which may or may not be a good idea depending on the scenario of the hide.
And there's a, if you've never felt it, you'll feel it at some point. But if you have, you know exactly what I'm talking about, which is the dog's working a problem. And this sometimes happens in trial. And you call alert. And they'll say the judge says yes, and you try to give them a treat, and the dog's almost uninterested in the treat. Maybe they take the treat, but they go back to working because they didn't feel done with the problem. And that is an important reality, which is sometimes the dog would like to keep working the odor problem out a little bit longer. And even though you're happy enough, they're not happy enough.
And that's actually the kind of dog, the kind of searcher that I want to create. One that really wants to finish the problem and doesn't just want a treat out of it.
Yes.
But
that can be a problem for people in trial when the dog won't leave a problem because they keep wanting to search it.
Yes, so there always has to be balance. But I would rather err towards that side a bit. But I also think when you talk about the dog making a decision, I've seen particularly high-level dogs, so dogs who are in elite, and often dogs have been doing nose work for a long time, 7-8 years. And because of accumulated reward timings or placement, they make decisions wildly away from odor, and their handler tends to just take it. Maybe they're doing too much blind and they don't know that their dog tends to be this far from the odor when they make a decision. But I think that's a really important thing to notice and think about. And to most of the time, like we talked about before, you know where the hides are and be able to know when your dog has really found it.
Yeah.
Has gotten to whatever your criteria is for that particular hide.
Yeah. And another thing that's worth mentioning is that what you're talking about is almost only something you worry about when it's blind. So you'll tend to...
Sorry, we just had a bunch of
Yeah,
comments.
you want to write that in? Good ratio of blind. So you will interact with your dog differently in a blind search than you would in a non-blind search, and that's okay. But you have to understand, like, let's say in a blind search, you're going to wait longer just to be sure, which is something I don't condone, but let's leave it as is for now. That's fine, but that shouldn't bleed over necessarily into your training.
Yeah.
Your training you should reward based on a set criteria on what the dog does, not when you feel comfortable.
Yeah, but I also hear this when your dog has made a decision a lot in classes.
Yeah.
And kind of related to when you're not necessarily expecting the dog to get all the way to source. And I think that's where some of the issue and confusion comes in.
Which we don't do a lot of inaccessible hides. We don't think that they're valuable or important.
And so we're not waiting for the dog to make a decision. We're waiting for the dog to get to odor.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
if
yeah.
they
There's
can't,
no decision.
then there's some sort of decision that has to be made if they can't or you don't expect them to.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, I hope that answers your question. Let's see. We drill the dogs on certain repeated exercises like threshold hides, corner hides, 2 hides close together, working a wall, so that they're trained to perform these common hides at a trial. Are there drills or exercises the handler can practice to condition us to respond without thinking during a trial? Especially...
Essentially, we respond automatically to our training.
Yes. I really like that we're getting questions about handler training rather than dog training, which is really good.
And what is it where they talk about, like, when you first know something, it's conscious that you
have
the
4
have
stages
to be
of learning
to perform it.
Well, you have to be conscious to perform.
You have to be really actively thinking about what you're doing to do it well.
You want me to go through it?
Yeah, go
okay.
over the exact.
So there are 4 stages of learning. The first stage is unconscious incompetence, which means you don't know how bad you are because you don't know anything about what you're doing, right? So before you've ever thought about taking piano lessons, you don't know how much there is to learn about piano. You don't know how bad you are. You don't know any of this stuff. Then you start taking lessons. The next level is conscious incompetence. So you suddenly become aware of how bad you're doing. And in my experience, a lot of people quit at this level because they feel like they're getting worse. And they're not getting worse. They're actually just learning how bad they already were. And that's an improvement. And you have to allow, if you're going to master anything, you have to allow yourself to be bad at it. That's just natural course of learning. The next step after that is conscious competence, where you can perform it while you're giving it 100% of your attention, right? And so I can play the piano really well, but if the doorbell rings, I get distracted and it falls apart, right? The last level is unconscious competence, where the doorbell rings and I'm like, oh yeah, come on in, how's it going? And I'm still playing. It makes no difference, okay? That's the highest level of mastery that you can attain.
Yeah, and so I think where your question is somewhere between, well, it's kind of in the last 3 stages, and it also is related to what Lainey Basham talks about in mental management, where you have to move your basic behaviors like leash handling. This wouldn't be an example he would use, but for our purposes, leash handling from where you have to focus really hard on being able to do it to it being automatic, so that you're only having to worry about what's truly important in that moment, the stuff that you can't move to your sort of subconscious. And so that's why we do leash handling drills in class to some people's chagrin, because it's not the most fun and exciting thing.
And leash handling is probably the prime example of a skill that you need to not be thinking about.
Yeah.
You
if you're
need
having
to get
think
that.
About that, that's way too much of your mental power, because you need to move absolutely everything you can out of your mental power for the moment of your actual, your 2-minute search. You just don't have time for all that stuff. And when you're nervous and anxious, you're going to drop everything that you're not really good at. And also, what was the other thing I was going to say about that? I lost it. Okay, go ahead.
Well, let's take a look at one skill like leash handling.
Oh, I remembered.
Go ahead.
So what I see when people are working on a new thing in nose work, like, for example, I was working with somebody a lot who really wanted to verbalize what her dog was doing in searches. And she could do it really well through rewarding the first hide.
Yeah.
and then she would lose it, because she could kind of maintain focus on that for that much of the search. And so what's important is, like, maybe you can think about something for the first 30 seconds of the search, and then you need to extend that to the first minute of the search, minute and a half.
Because being able to do
pressures,
something and being able to do something for an extended period of time are two different things.
Yeah, and with distractions, because it was breaking her out of her focus, the reward and all that whole moment. And maybe you need people talking to you while you're searching, playing music while you're searching, doing a variety of things that force you to kind of be distracted but still be able to handle the new thing that you're working on. And a lot of things you can practice without your dog, so that you're able to really consciously work on those without messing your dog up and without having to break your focus.
Leash handling is a prime example of that as well. You do not need a dog to practice leash handling.
Yeah,
but,
and footwork too.
Yeah, well, let's talk. So mechanical skills. There are 3 mechanical skills, and from most important to least important, they are reward, timing, and placement, footwork, and leash handling. Okay? So let's take a look at leash handling and detail the steps. How to get that from step 1 to unconscious competence. Mm-hmm. So I would say 1 is practice without a dog. Attach your leash to a fence, to a crate door. I'm going to do a video on some basic leash handling exercises you can do without a dog, but that, I got to do.
Work on a variety of lengths.
So that's the next thing is, I see in nose work, one of the big mistakes people make is they get too comfortable using only one type of leash. Use every kind of leash you can imagine. 4 foot, all the way up to 30 foot, really thin, really thick, chain, leather, plastic, nylon, use it all. Get comfortable, like you could feel like you could be a good handler handling any leash. And then the next step, and this is what's important in music, is you get comfortable doing a lot of different things, and then you intentionally distract yourself. So that's why we do a lot of multitasking games, like Trivial Pursuit, where we're asking you questions, things like that. So you can give yourself things like that, like you can recite your favorite poem while you're leash handling. You can just point out random things while you're leash handling. So say your phone number, say what colors you're seeing, say these kind of things. So occupy your brain with something else. Have someone talk to you while you're leash handling. Normally we'd be like, I'm trying to focus. That's the point. If you're trying to focus, that means it's not in your subconscious, right? So work on thinking about something other than what you're doing. And as soon as you notice it's falling apart, okay, come back, fix it, then slowly push that out of your mind and focus on something else. And, we should create little patches you can stick on your dog's harness that you have to read while you're searching with them. That would be really fun. Mm-hmm. So that's a good example of the steps I would take to do that. Also, practicing your leash handling skills with not your dog, so someone else's dog, another person. Practicing your leash handling skills with a horse, things like that. The more things you have access to.
When we got our own horses and started doing a lot of groundwork with them, my leash handling got so much better, and you're using a much larger leash. And so it's on a very different scale than with your dog. Yeah. But it's amazing. And
if any of you guys want information in Southern California in particular, want information on our horse trainer who might do some kind of workshop to help you learn how to handle a line with a horse, he could do that, and we'd be happy to connect you with him, and maybe you guys all do that as a field trip or something, and I'm sure he'd think that was a really fun blast.
Yeah.
So, anyways.
I also wanted to say, because Michael brought up the most important mechanical skill, reward timing and placement. Another thing that you can do without your dog is practicing pulling treats out. You have no idea how bad people are at this. Yeah, but you should go to a trial and time how long it takes people to pull their treats out, because it's horrendous. And if you watch our trial videos, like, we're way slower than we are in practice when we're in a trial. You're nervous, your fingers don't work, it's cold, whatever. But Denise Fenzi had a challenge a few months ago on, like, how many treats can you pull out of your tea bag or your pocket or whatever.
In like 10 seconds or something.
Yeah, or it may have been longer originally and then shortened. And the number that people do was amazing. Yeah. And I think that might be a fun
That's one of those secret drills of dog trainers that when people ask, wow, how do you get your dog to do so well? That's one of the secret drills is we actually practice just giving our dogs treats. Like, as fast as we can, as accurately as it can. Like, we sit here and we practice throwing the treat like exactly where we want it to go, and that's what like
the other week I fed Icy her whole dinner by tossing her kibble to her one at a time.
We have an exercise in class where there's certain exercises where you're not allowed to do the exercise until you can get 10 out of 10 treats in a bowl from 10 feet, and that kind of stuff.
And people think that they're just bad at those and there's nothing they can do.
Yeah.
But I see people improve in one session.
Yeah.
So it's worth just doing instead of complaining about it, which is my natural tendency too.
Yeah.
But you really can make improvements. All these people think their memory's just bad and they can't get better, but it's not true. I've seen amazing improvements in people's memory.
Yeah.
And their mechanical skills.
So to go back to what we talked about, the threshold challenge, absolutely, you can post that. Post it wherever, and if you post it somewhere outside of our groups, put a little note. We would appreciate it if you put a little note that this was our Patreon challenge, just to get people interested in what we're doing, and hope more people come and challenge themselves. And
post to Facebook and Patreon or
Instagram, Twitter, whatever you do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you post videos to Twitter? I imagine.
You can post links to video to Twitter. I don't know. I don't use Twitter, so.
We won't see it if you put it on Twitter, so don't do that.
Yeah. Well, you can send us the link, but anyways. So this person watched our "What Does a Smell Look Like" video. Not ours. We posted it from PBS. And she said, I got to wondering if it's possible to deliberately manipulate the odor in a search area to help your dog. Yes, I see it happen all the time, and it's something we recommend to our students. Like, sometimes you're working an area and the odor's not escaping. So what you can do is just move briskly and move in and out of the search area to draw the odor in and out of wherever it's being trapped.
It's also something to deliberately not do.
Yeah,
if you're swirling up the odor and the dog's like spinning and spinning and spinning because every time they try to work, you're in there with them and swirling the odor around.
That's like a last-ditch effort that it could be like a magic technique.
Could also totally screw you.
Yeah, but you only do it if you're already totally screwed.
Yeah. And one thing that our original nose work trainer had us try out was I think it was an elevated hide the dogs were struggling with or something. Not like they could get to it if they stretched up, at least a medium-sized dog. And she had us stand against the wall to allow the odor to bounce off of ourselves for the dog to get it. And
because don't forget, you are an object in the search area.
Yeah. And it worked. Not something I would try in trial.
Yeah, because you don't know where the odor needs to bounce off of.
Yeah.
Unless you're like a genius like Ron was.
Yeah.
Another thing that's like, this is a really obvious way that you may have done, and this is the same thing, which is the dog's working boxes or something for the first time. The odor's not escaping well enough, so you just step lightly on the top of the box to push the air out. To push that air out of it, and that is manipulating the odor. And it's the same as what we're doing. It's just in a different context.
I mean, the thing that I would say about this question is to help your dog, I would really, really try to avoid, except for those last ditch, I have 30 seconds left in my search and I'm going to fail if I don't do something, where you're really you're just, trying something. But in terms of training, I'm not going to say, I'm going to wander around and try to help my dog by moving the odor around.
But although
you're probably going to end up screwing them up more than you're going to help them if you do that. But as a hide setter, I think all the time about how I'm setting odor, how it's going to move, and I will manipulate the placements of the other objects in the search area. I'll manipulate airflow, like what doors we use, windows that are open or closed. I set a hide at a trial that was not moving the way I wanted at all, and I realized that there was a window open above it, and like this far open. And so I wanted a little movement, but not a ton of movement. So I just moved it to here, and then the odor did exactly what I wanted for the trial. So I think a really, really good thing to do for yourself is to practice hide setting and really think about how the odor moves. And maybe you only have your dog and a couple of others to look at, but you learn so much. And then as you do that, you can take that to trial. So now I can run my dog in a trial and say, okay, they're bouncing off this, and they're going here, and the odor must be there. But setting hides and watching dogs work them is what enables me to do that way better than I ever could before. And I also can set hide problems that I intend to set, which I couldn't do a few years ago. I would set something and go, that's not working, or that's way harder than I thought, or that's way easier than I thought. And that still happens sometimes, but you when you practice something, you get much better at it, and you can start to really create the kind of hide palms that you want, and then teach your dog and yourself what you want with those hide placements.
Yep. Yep. Good question. Okay, so next person is, what's a good ratio of blind to non-blind? One thing that I would say, and this is for me, I think Natalie has a different answer than I do, actually. So I'll answer first, and then she can answer her answer. But in my opinion, blind searches are handler training, to train the handler how to do a blind search. Once you have gotten that learning done, which in my opinion shouldn't take much longer than, it shouldn't take more than 50 searches, 50 blind searches, period. You shouldn't need to do blind searches anymore. In fact, you know, I have the bloodhound that I compete with. I should be releasing some videos of him soon, but I think the only blind searches I've ever done with him have been at competition and maybe at a workshop that we've done.
Couple of
but
game days or whatever.
His owner is always like, do you want to run him? Do you want to do a blind search? I'm like, no. I don't want to do blind searches. I just want to train him. I want to train him to be as good as he can be. And then I'm just going to do my job. I know what my job is. I don't need to test it. And that goes, you know, I screwed the heck out of Lumi by doing a bunch of blind searches with her. And I'll never recover that. I've ruined her. We got her elite finally, but we did that. And then with my second dog, you know, I did I should do a couple blind searches just to make sure. And I did that. And then we stopped. We didn't do any more. And now I don't feel the need to do blind searches at all, personally. But that's just me.
Yeah.
Except that they're fun. So if there's a fun game, I'll do it. Or, you know, like we do murder mysteries and things like that, I'll do that. That's a blast. But that's just because I'm having fun, not because I think it's useful.
Yeah. Although having fun is useful.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not against having fun.
And now I'm very curious what Michael thinks my answer is, but I'll go ahead and just answer. So I think that blind searches are not very useful for your dog, except that it's good for them to have had a couple of experiences with it blind for you, so that they're not like, is my handler having a heart attack when you're in trial for the first time? So I think a little bit of that is good for them, but mostly it's just the handler not being confident that they can read their dog. And so if you can get over that, you'll be totally fine. You don't need to practice blind. Yeah. I pretty much now, and partially because we don't have a lot of events that we get to go to ourselves, I'd like to maybe do that a little bit more. But the only time I do blind is in trial. All of my other practice is non-blind. I think before I titled Ghost in the spring, I did one blind search, just because I hadn't really, she's not my dog, I didn't work her. And so I just wanted to have had that experience with her. But I did, a month of non-blind practice and then a blind search, and then we went and, titled. And with my other dogs, almost never, ever do blind. And partially, my training time with them is pretty limited. And so I want to make sure that I am upkeeping their training and instilling good habits, not creating bad habits, which I'm doing in trial. I think I told this story on here before, but I think it was last fall. I had 2 or 3 elite trials within a month. And I noticed after the second, I think it must have been 3, because I noticed after the second one that Hazel was alerting like far from odor. And just in places that would probably be good calls in trial, but were not nearly close enough for me. So I spent a week fixing that. And because I just hadn't been practicing at all in between trials. And her next trial was so much better, so much more precision. We got, I think, no nose, and we had been getting some nose in the other 2 trials. And so for me, I would even rather somebody train their eye by watching videos and watching a lot of dogs, because you don't need to watch your own dog to learn how to read dogs blind. You can watch trial videos or just search videos and try to call it before the handler, like our shoulda, woulda, coulda game.
Yeah.
Because I do think, and you're going to train your eye faster if you're watching a high volume of other people,
especially if you watch subtle dogs. Like, most people have dogs that are not subtle.
Yeah.
Right, and they think they're dog. I can't read them. Well, you haven't tried reading a subtle dog. try reading a subtle dog, and then your dog feels like night and day.
Yeah.
That was a big difference for me when I started reading subtle dogs. But
And it's also just an internal confidence thing, because until we've had the experience of being
Yes.
right, we just feel like we can't do it, which is totally valid. And I do think that
Yeah.
even though I say all this, I would still want to do at least a couple of blind searches with the dog
Yeah.
if I'd never worked with them before.
Another thing I would mention, which is that when we do blind searches, aside from trial, when we do blind searches, we do them exclusively with trusted trainers that are better, like have a good eye.
Yeah.
Like we know
Someone
a lot of
who's not going to like screw us up or screw
Yeah.
our dogs up.
we know a lot of people who have husbands that are on the no hide setting list. You know, you're not allowed to set hides for the dog anymore, or friends. And I don't recommend having people set blind searches for your dog that don't understand nose work.
Yeah, and it may not be, they're probably not going to screw your dog up, but they're going to mess up with your confidence. And that's
Yeah.
the most important thing that you
Exactly.
don't want them to do.
Well, 'cause
You don't
they're
wanna
gonna
set
come at
something
it-
you can't
yeah.
read, and then you think you can't read your dog anymore, but it's just some weird hide you've never worked.
Well, because the average person is going to come at it with the attitude of let's see where we can put this hide. You know, so it's like going up to someone and saying, "Hey, I've been learning martial arts. Would you punch me?" And they're gonna be like, "Oh, let's see if I can punch him," instead of trying to help you develop your skill.
Yeah.
They're gonna be trying to screw you up. So you need to have someone you trust.
Yeah, like one thing I love about working with Amy Hero is that she always offers that you don't have to run it blind if you don't want to, and if you do want to run it blind, you can say, "Don't let me mess up," and she will step in and give you info if you need it or if you think you need it, and that you can always say, "Okay, I just want to run this past you. Like, I think we might be done, or I think there's something here," and that she'll give you that information.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to work with people who are willing to coach you through blind searches, because I think those can be a beneficial way of bridging the gap of not screwing yourself and your dog up, but still getting to learn to read your dog. And we've played around in some classes with calling it for you, so you get to read it blind, but then we don't let you have terrible timing for your dog's sake.
Yeah.
And I think that can be worth doing, and that's something you can practice with.
That's a great
your nose work
exercise to do.
friends.
It is. Okay, let's see. So this person says they keep failing containers with distractions. So first thing I would say is, no, you keep failing competition container searches, which is different than failing containers with distractions. And the only reason I can say this is because I've worked with you in person. It's not easy to replicate the problem of her falsing in training. She does really well in training. So to me, it's not a distractor problem. It's something about being in a new environment or competing. That said, yeah, distractions can be a very difficult challenge, and I would recommend setting distractions in all of your searches all the time, not exclusively containers. In all of your elements. Set distractions in vehicles, interiors, exteriors. Set them everywhere. And that usually will solve the problem.
And also consider finding a way to really up the value of your reward, so that finding odor just means so much more than sniffing a hot dog in a box.
And to me, that means significantly upping your praise game.
Yeah. And it might, yeah, absolutely. That's like 90% upping your praise and your enthusiasm, your petting, what makes her feel good. And then maybe you throw treats sometimes, not trial, obviously.
Yeah. We throw a lot of treats for our dogs.
Yeah, and not necessarily like at them all the time, but like throw it for them to chase. Give them a whole bunch in a row. Give them a whole bunch in your hand. Give them, just find different ways. Give them a whole bunch of different sorts of treats. Like, we have a trainer friend who, like, he tells one of his big things that he works on with the students is come up with new ways to reward your dog and find the treats that are, like, the most rewarding to them. Because maybe you think they love hot dogs, but maybe they really love something else. Sausage. I don't know. And he's been telling his students this for years, and he has this one dog. He trialed a number of dogs. This one dog that he'd kind of put on the back burner because she wasn't that enthusiastic. And then one day he was like, wait a second. She loves cheese. She loves cheese more than anything in the world. Why have I not pulled that out for nose work?
Yeah.
So he went out and did it right then, and he was amazed that he was now getting the performance out of his dog that he had wanted for years and hadn't been getting.
Who's that?
Jason.
Yeah, so that's Jason Hang. He's got a Patreon too you should check out if you're interested in learning more nose work.
Yeah. And so sometimes there's just something, maybe we've gotten just a bit boring, either in the type or consistency or whatever of our rewarding, whether that's the treat part or the praise part. I know with Cinnamon, she was a very, very foodie dog, but you give her the same treat 5 searches in a row, and she's like, nah, I'll go do something else. In her NW2, I borrowed a meatball from somebody, and I had her back.
Yeah.
And we passed that day because I switched her
I
rewards
think
on her.
it's so easy for people to slip into routines and just do the same thing the same way over and over again, and rewarding with the same treat in the same way on the same side of the dog. If you switch hands, like we have people, if you just put the treat in the other hand and try to reward with the other hand than you normally reward with, it blows people's brains because it's just like it's so automatically routine. There's no variation to it.
Yeah, we worked on that with quite a few of you.
Yeah.
So I'm sure you remember that.
You want to...
And for dogs that are willing to play with the toy, that can be a great thing to bring in, but expect them to not be willing to take the toy as a reward to nose work right away. I always warm my dog up with a toy before I send them into search because otherwise they expect the treats and they're a little annoyed that there's a toy instead. Although I can switch back and forth more, but Hazel, she has to know ahead of time or she's not willing to play with the toy in nose work.
So, you want to do the last giveaway?
Sure. So we are giving away a T-shirt. And
Vintage.
Is that the one we're giving away? No.
Oh, I don't know.
One size of that one.
Okay. Yeah.
We have a few different styles, and we have
Your choice. Just give them a choice.
Extra large. No, we don't have any extra large. We have large, medium, small, and extra small, but we don't have all of them in all of the types. So depending on who gets it, we'll have to figure out which one you want. But we have the most from our first showdown. And so
collect them all.
Yeah. So it has 3 trees you can see there. An apple tree, a Joshua tree, and a palm tree. And those are meant to represent Apple Valley, Palmdale, and Moore Park, because those were our original 3 locations. And it has vendor on the back. And so, yeah, like I said, we have the most sizes in this, and then we have like small and extra small.
This is from the latest one.
And then we have our very, very first ever Ready, Sit, Go shirt, but we only have one of these. And this is
so your choice of shirt,
a
basically.
small. So you can't have already won today because those people, I think, have fast fingers.
Okay, so someone who hasn't already run, what do they have to type?
You have to type.
Normally we do hashtag Nana.
Okay, just hashtag Nama.
Hashtag Nama. Go! First one to do it gets the shirt. There it was.
All right, Martha.
Boom. Wow, geez.
Maybe we should give 2.
Yeah, we could give 2. Yeah.
All right, so
yeah.
Martha and Patty Sontag both get T-shirts. So I will message you and get your sizes and figure out which one you want.
Okay, so thanks once again to all of our patrons for making this actually possible. It's so cool. You've made it, that we can do this for you guys and put all of our ideas out there, and you guys seem to be enjoying it and made our move to Missouri possible. We really appreciate you guys.
They're going to unsubscribe because they didn't want us to move.
I know. Well, I made sure not to say that too many times before we move. Like, the more patrons we get, the more likely we are to move to Missouri. Don't tell them that. Yeah, so don't unsupport us. We can't move back at this point. We're stuck here.
Yeah, we extra can't move back. We lose patrons.
Yeah.
No, but you guys are awesome.
Yeah,
and,
you guys really
and
are.
we really love creating stuff for you and doing these. And we should have another video coming out.
We should. Yeah, we filmed a bunch of them, so we'll be sending them out soon. I think they're really good. I'm really happy with how they came out.
Yeah, and we also was there something else we wanted to ask people? Oh, I think you already did, about what kind of lessons people are interested in us posting.
Let us know. And we're super open to feedback and discussion. Like, yeah, I know that there have been more comments recently to the most recent videos I posted. I really like that. And challenge my ideas. Push back. If you disagree, let me know. I'm more than happy to defend what I believe and explain why. And who knows, you might change my mind. So please give me feedback. Give me discussion. I really hope that this works.
And if you are, like, I've been noticing, some of the trainers we have on here have been talking about, incorporating stuff in their own classes and how they've seen things work or not work. And that's, I think, really helpful for everybody to hear those things and to just give each other ideas on making all of our classes better.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there should be more open exchange between trainers and not so much secretism. But
Yeah.
so someone just asked where they can find the threshold challenge. That's at the beginning of this video. Take a look at it. And we're going to be posting that threshold lesson video next week. So watch for it, and then you'll see what I mean by distractions on your threshold. And I want to see the most flashy, flamboyant, beautiful thresholds you can post.
All right.
Okay. Thank you guys so much. We'll see you guys next time.